bail? Are you against the idea that people can shoplift and not be held accountable for their actions? Let's talk real accountability for actions and not false accountability for words. I believe that stabbing someone is worse than saying a word, both.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button because we're diving into some real conversations that the mainstream media doesn't want to have. Today we're breaking down an absolutely explosive debate between Piers Morgan, Steven Crowder, and Marc Lamont Hill. We're talking free speech, accountability, and the double standards that are tearing this country apart. Crowder dropped some serious truth bombs about what's really happening with censorship and selective enforcement, and trust me, you need to hear this breakdown. Make sure you watch until the end. Please comment down where you are watching from. It's great to see people from over the world connecting in here. All right, now let's get into the video.
Actually, well, Mark, I'll get you to respond. I have to say, in a way, completely different scenario, but how we got here, I think the same blame can be attached to how we got here to what is going on with the reaction to Joe Biden's health news. I made a point last night on X when that story broke. I was staggered by the instantaneous mockery, abuse, glee, ecstasy, desire for him to die that poured out in response to my tweet revealing this news about him having aggressive advanced stage 4 prostate cancer metastasizing to his bones, which is clearly an incredibly serious situation for a man of his age. And I just made the point, the guy's served his country for 50 years, whatever you think of it, this is the moment just to wish him well, isn't it? The answer was no, and has carried on being no for the next 24 hours in the most stunningly abusive, horrific, ghastly manner, totally inhumane to me. And I think the common theme, Stephen, of the two things is social media. Social media has, I think, inflamed social and racial tensions to a point where people just don't think the normal rules of society apply. They can be as disgusting and inhumane and racist and sexist and whatever they want to be as they like, with no accountability in almost every case. And we've become almost neutralized to that kind of thing. And part of the problem is that when people like you and me, and Mark, I'm sure, launch staunch defenses of the right to free speech, the wrong ears take it as the right to be openly racist and all these other things with no accountability. They misunderstand what free speech actually entails. It doesn't mean you're never going to be held accountable for what you say. When Shiloh Hendricks said that she said the N word, whatever, this was her right to free speech. Yeah, but everybody else has a right to hold you accountable for it. And it's the second part of that equation, which is, I think, important. So, Stephen, your response to my thesis.
Yeah. Yes, I disagree. I think social media is a part of it, but I also don't think that we're dealing with an accountability culture as far as the country. I think we're dealing with a false accountability culture as far as the media and those in the establishment. You have myself, for example, who was demonetized, throttled on YouTube for simply using the term lispy queer, someone who referred to themselves as a lispy queer. It was a quote. Then moved over to Rumble, and after the exodus, Diageo, in charge of 80% of the world's advertising, told Rumble that it wasn't enough to demonetize myself, but that they wouldn't spend $1 of advertising on the entire platform, an alternative platform to YouTube, unless I was removed. You've had entire governments try and remove platforms for freedom of speech. This is not the accountability that people in the streets are calling for. What is being called for example, from people in the media, is a lie. They would rather hear a lie than the truth. And so you have people checking out. For example, someone's afraid to say, could be my black neighbors, but it's anecdotal. I'm not supposed to say the black friend thing. Moved to the same neighborhood I have because it's safer and there's a stronger sense of community. But if you want me to lie to you and say, I picked that neighborhood and it just so happens to be more mixed or more white, but my neighbor's a former Dallas Cowboy, you can demand a lie, but the media is demanding the lie, not the American people. I am in no way concerned going down to a black neighborhood because I do it to the tune of hours, hundreds of hours of footage and hundreds of millions of views discussing these issues. The challenge I run into is when someone else, a third party, wants to play a game of telephone and tell them that it's racist. You can go and watch. I had not one, not two, but 10 people in this installment say, yeah, I think all lives matter. I think anyone who says that's white supremacy is out of their mind. They don't speak for us, the black community. I'd never know that unless I had that conversation with them. Very few people are doing it. You're demanding a lie of people.
Okay, Mark, your response.
Hold on. Did you catch what just happened there? Piers brings up social media and accountability, and Crowder just flipped the entire conversation on its head. And he's absolutely right. See, Piers is talking about accountability like it's some noble thing we're missing. But Crowder's pointing at something way more dangerous. We don't have an accountability problem. We have a selective enforcement problem. And that difference? That's everything. Think about what he just described. He got demonetized for quoting someone, not even saying it himself, quoting. Then Diageo, who controls 80% of global advertising, didn't just want him gone from YouTube. They wanted him erased from Rumble entirely, or they wouldn't spend $1 on the platform. That's not accountability. That's economic warfare. That's, we will destroy your livelihood and any platform that hosts you. And here's where Crowder nails it. The media doesn't want honesty. They want the lie. They want you to pretend you chose your neighborhood for reasons you didn't. They want you to sanitize your actual lived experience to fit their narrative about what you're allowed to think and say. But watch what he does next. He doesn't just complain. He shows receipts. Hundreds of hours of footage. Hundreds of millions of views. Going into communities, having actual conversations. And you know what those conversations reveal. 10 people in that segment alone saying, all lives matter isn't white supremacy and they don't speak for us. That's the part that terrifies the establishment. Because if you have the actual conversation instead of the one they script for you, you might find out that regular people, regardless of race, actually agree on way more than the media wants us to believe. The gaslighting is insane. Crowder's literally doing the work, documenting everything, getting people on camera saying what they actually think. But then a third party swoops in and says, that's racist without ever watching the footage or hearing those voices. They just need the label to stick so you stop listening. This is why he's right about false accountability. Real accountability would mean the media answers for demanding lies. Real accountability would mean Diageo answers for trying to silence speech they don't like. Real accountability would mean we judge content by what was actually said, not what someone claims was said. Instead, we get mob rule. We get corporate censorship dressed up as community standards. We get people afraid to share their honest experiences because someone might twist it later. And Piers is worried about mean tweets, while Crowder's pointing at systematic silencing of alternative platforms. One is annoying. The other is terrifying for the future of free speech.
Lots of things. Again, first, I think Stephen is, and I don't assign to you any ill intent, but you're comparing apples and oranges here when we talk about the Carmelo Anthony and the racist woman, I can't think of her name, video.
Lily Gaddis.
I think, as you pointed out,
Shiloh
all day,
Hendricks.
no, not Lily Gaddis, but
you're talking about Shiloh Hendricks,
yeah. Shiloh Hendricks, yes. When you talk about context, I think we have to look at context in the context even of these GoFundMes, right? The people who are funding Carmelo Anthony, you can tell this from the comments, this isn't my guess, they're not saying good job. They're saying we don't believe that you're guilty. We don't believe that you've gotten a fair legal process, and so we're sending money to make sure that you get a proper legal defense because we don't believe that you are guilty of this crime. That is what they're saying. Now, you and I may look at the evidence and come to the same conclusion or a different conclusion, but they're not attempting to reward the behavior. They're attempting to challenge a system that they feel like is misrepresenting the behavior. In the case of the N-word and this woman, right, Charlotte, what's happening is quite different. They're not saying, hey, we feel like she's taken such a loss from her free exercise of free speech that we want to reimburse her for that. That would be a different argument. I still wouldn't want to do it, but that would at least be logically and morally consistent. When you look in the comments and when you talk to people who are funding that campaign, they are literally shouting the N-word. They are literally echoing the racial epithet. And that is different. That's why I say if this is really going to be a First Amendment cause, again, and not the lie that you're talking about, then let's invest in actual First Amendment causes and not this. And to your second point, I agree, and then I got you wholeheartedly. I mean, there's absolutely nothing wrong with making decisions about where you want to live. But there's a huge difference between saying, I want to live in a statistically safe neighborhood, or I want to live in a historically safe neighborhood, and I don't want to live around black people under any circumstances. And again, the latter is what came out in our conversation on the show the last time. And we're melding those two things as if they are the same, and then acting as if there's just no room for a white person, or a black person for that matter, to exercise any radical honesty about where they want to live. I ain't met a person yet that doesn't want to live in a safe neighborhood. I want to live in a safe neighborhood. I also want to live around black people. People can make their own choices, but let's not pretend they're the same thing.
Okay, we've got to end it there. Yeah. I would say, in answer to your question, Stephen, I would say in both the GoFundMe cases, I think it's wrong. I think the
stabbing is worse than a word.
I think the intentions on both sides are actually malevolent and wrong. They're not doing it out of any great sense of social justice or anything. They're doing it because they're taking a side based on skin color in both those stories, I think. So I think...
murder is worse than yelling.
Yeah, listen.
I think.
You know, allegedly stabbing someone to death is worse than
getting legally railroaded is a worse outcome than getting held accountable for using the N-word. It's all about the framing.
But Stephen's point is that one is worse.
Wait. Marc just spent 3 minutes trying to convince us that the GoFundMe for a murder suspect is better than the GoFundMe for someone who said a slur because he read the comments differently. Are you serious right now? Let's break down what just happened. Marc's entire argument rests on, well, the people donating to Anthony think he's innocent. Okay, fine. But here's the problem. That's also a judgment call about intent. You're literally doing the same thing you're accusing the other side of doing. You're looking at why people are donating and deciding one motive is pure and the other is evil. But here's what Marc completely glosses over. One case involves an alleged stabbing death. The other involves words, and we're supposed to parse the comments on GoFundMe to figure out which deserves more outrage? That's insane. And notice the sleight of hand? Marc says they're literally shouting the N-word in the comments. Okay, so ban those people, but that's not the woman who said it. That's random internet users. Are we seriously going to judge every cause by its worst online supporters? Because I guarantee you could find disgusting comments on the Anthony GoFundMe too, if you wanted to look for them. This is exactly the selective enforcement Crowder was talking about. Marc gets to decide which GoFundMe has good intentions and which has bad intentions based on what? His interpretation of comments? His feelings about the donors? And then he pivots to the neighborhood thing and again misses the point. Nobody's arguing for the right to say, I hate black people. Crowder's argument is that people are afraid to be honest about their lived experiences because someone like Marc will interpret it in the worst possible light. And Marc just proved that by claiming Crowder said something he didn't in their last conversation. You see how this works? Crowder says, I moved to a safer neighborhood. Marc hears, I don't want to live around black people. And now Crowder has to defend himself against something he never said, while Marc gets to claim the moral high ground. This is the game. You share your honest experience, someone reframes it as racism, and now you're the bad guy. Meanwhile, Marc is over here literally defending donations to an accused murderer by saying, well, they really believe he's innocent. Great. And the people donating to the woman really believe she's being persecuted for free speech. Why does only one of those beliefs get charitable interpretation? Piers actually gets it right at the end. Both are motivated by tribalism. Both are taking sides based on identity. But Marc wants us to believe his side is righteous and the other is malevolent. And that double standard, that's the exact false accountability Crowder called out. You can't claim to care about fairness while simultaneously reading minds and assigning pure motives to one group and evil motives to another. That's not justice. That's just picking teams.
I don't think we can end this on this, Piers. I can take 30 seconds here. If we're talking about accountability,
That framing suggests that the money is going for the behavior.
Are you against the discount under... under $1,000 or less, where a shopkeeper has to close down because of the name of systemic restorative justice? Are you against cash and release? Are you against cash bail? Are you against the idea that people can shoplift and not be held accountable for their actions? Let's talk real accountability for actions and not false accountability for words. I believe that stabbing someone is worse than saying a word. Both are bad. Me, Mr. Traditional.
You know what?
Okay.
Let me
respond to that. Let me respond to that.
Quickly.
Because again, that is a disingenuous framing. No one is arguing that stabbing someone is better than using the word. My point is our response as a community to the stabbing is not to say, great job. Our response is, this was awful, but let's find out what really happened. No one is saying on the other side of this issue that N-word thing is awful, but let's hold this woman accountable, but let's not go too far. And if they are, I'm okay with that. But it's not apples and oranges. No one is saying what that woman did is worse than that kid getting stabbed. They're saying that the story of the stabbing hasn't been told well or properly, and we want justice for everybody. And to answer your cash bail, yes, I'm against cash bail. But I don't believe I don't believe that that's the only way to hold people accountable. You can hold people accountable without cash bail.
I've got to leave it there, not least, Mark, because I'm worried about what you're doing to your ear at the moment. There's clearly an issue, a malfunction.
My microphone fell out.
And there's something, it looks like you're basically gouging your own ear out in horror of what's happening on screen.
Oh, come on.
There it is, right there. Did you catch Mark's answer? Yes, I'm against cash bail. And that's exactly Crowder's point about false accountability. Crowder just laid out the perfect challenge. You want to talk about accountability? Let's talk about shopkeepers closing down because people can steal under $1,000 with zero consequences. Let's talk about catch and release where violent offenders are back on the streets the same day. Let's talk about actual crimes with actual victims being treated like parking tickets. But Mark wants us outraged over a word while simultaneously saying he's against cash bail, the basic mechanism that kept dangerous people off the streets pending trial. You can't have it both ways. You can't demand accountability for speech while dismantling accountability for actions. And watch how Mark deflects. That's a disingenuous framing. Nobody's saying stabbing is better than words. But Crowder never said that's what Mark was saying. Crowder's point is about where we direct our accountability energy. And the answer is clear. We're spending more energy punishing words than we are punishing actual violence. That's not disingenuous. That's observable reality. So what do you think of this? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below, and please don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.